Good evening, people of Hout Bay, and to anyone else who's coming down to Hout Bay. My name's Michael Bowen. I put this together. It is snake season at the moment. A lot of people are worried about snakes in Hout Bay. They are not exactly as common as everyone thinks. You're not exactly going to come across them, even when hiking. They are generally not around there. But I wanted to put this together to just kind of touch on two of the medically significant snakes that we have in Hout Bay. So first of all, are you in the right place? And if you're watching this, so you are definitely in the right place if you want to know what to do if you see a snake in the garden or in your house in Hout Bay. So you're in the right place. Or if you want to know what the medically significant snakes we have in Hout Bay are. Or you want to know what to do if you or your pet are bitten. And lastly, if you want to know if there's any truth to those, a lot of those old wives' tales. So to kick us right off, the first thing I want to get around here is what is a snake protocol? What do you do when you see a snake? And it's generally only, there's a couple of very important points when you're doing this. Is you need to keep watching the snake. You need to call WatchCon on 021 790 9333. They've got all our numbers. They broadcast the whole group. There's about 6 of us on there. It's better than actually calling one by one around all the snake relocators to actually see who's available. Remember, we're volunteers. So keep watching the snake, call WatchCon. Keep watching the snake, take a photo and WhatsApp it to WatchCon, and keep watching the snake. It doesn't help us if you don't watch a snake. You run inside and you go, oh, I've got a snake, and you go back outside and it's gone. You're like, how do we know where it's going to be? The snake can move really, really fast. We can really come and help if you know exactly where they are. And the photos are going to help a lot for us as well. If you've got a photo, a lot of people call us up and they say, well, they've got this big cobra in their garden and they've got black mambas and they've got all that kind of stuff. And snakes we don't even get down here that are really medically significant, but we don't get them. And you get the photo after a while and you see it and it's a slug eater. It's this big. So it's very important that we should do get that. And likewise, in reverse, some of the other snakes, like a mole snake, can easily be confused. And it kind of looks like a cobra. So you could think it's just a mole snake. And, okay, find a mole snake, looking after mice and rats in your garden and those other kind of vermin, but in reality, it's actually a cobra. So please send us a photo to WatchCon. They will get hold of all of us and they will send it out. And we will actually try and see if we can get someone around there as soon as possible. A couple of very important things, please, please, please. Okay, do not try and catch a snake. Okay, it's not quite the same as snakes in the city. If you've seen that on YouTube or on DSTV, it is not the same. Some of these snakes around here that are medically significant are very, very venomous. Cape cobras in particular are probably one of the most high venomous dosing snakes that we actually have around here in most of South Africa. They inject a large amount of venom. So do not try and catch it. Do not try and kill the snake, please. If you're close enough to kill it, it's generally close enough to kill you. So please stay back, keep watching it, call WatchCon, get a hold of us. Do not lose sight of the snake. I think I've reiterated that a number of times and why that's important. We can come around and we can get it if we know where it is. If we don't know where it is and you're not watching it, it can go somewhere else. And lastly, do not call us an hour or two later, please. This is vitally important. An hour or two later, that snake could be long gone. Or an hour or two later, it could have actually bitten somebody else. It's very rare for bites, but it's super important that call us when it does happen. And by us, I mean WatchCon. 021 790 9333. If you don't have that number on your phone, please take your phone out now, save that number. It's vitally important. What happens if you don't listen? And I wanted to bring this in not to scare everybody, but purely to highlight this is a person over here in Montague, went to go and handle the snake by itself, does understand that puff adders, there's a way of handling them, there's a way definitely not to handle them. Trying to neck a puff adder is not a very clever idea. In this case, you'd actually try to neck it, and puff adders can actually bite through their lower lip and actually did manage to go through and hit his thumb. And that is a result of what happens when you try and do these things by yourself. Stilettos also can whip around and actually get you envenomated through their actual fangs that can actually go backwards. So please don't try and catch them yourself. This is the kind of stuff that does really happen. It's very rare that snake bites. Please just don't try and do it yourself. Who am I? Sorry, I've just been blurting out there a few kind of things, and super important to know who am I. My name's Michael Bowen. I generally work in IT management. I'm also a property investor, and I'm one of about 6 volunteer snake catchers in the Bay that is part of this group. There are other guys around throughout the entire Western Cape, Cape Town, etc. that we can get hold of once we know on that group. I've personally trained under Mike Perry from the Africa Snakebite Institute, as well as Dr. Tony Phelps. Both of them are well-renowned and well-known in their industry. And I've handled Cape cobras, puff adders, black mambas, Mozambique spitting cobras, rinkels, savannah cobras, mole snake, wormslungs, then your whips, heralds, centipedes, sluggies, and more like that. And of course, I've got my own corn snake. I've been relocating in Hout Bay since I moved down here in 2017. You probably have seen some of the videos that I do put online onto Hout Bay Organized. I put that out there for education purposes, not for entertainment purposes. It is for people to see what they are actually like, to know that they're not actually as bad as what old wives tell them out to be. And yeah, if you want to get more information around Mike Perry, and if you do want to do a course, or I think he's got about 3 courses. One is on snake identification. Then there is the snake medical aid treatment. And then lastly, there is the advanced course in the black mambas. Great course that is up in Joburg. If anybody ever would want to do something like that, check out African Snake Bite Institute. Couple of the snakes in and around Hout Bay that I've personally handled. On the left-hand side over there, you can see a Wormslung. These generally do sit up in the trees. We get them often. We don't relocate these, and there's a reason for that. They are very, very delicate. Trying to handle them with tongs, you end up breaking their backs if you're not careful. And they're also very reclusive and very reluctant to bite. They're generally way high up in trees. They will follow around their food, birds, things like that. They'll go hunting. They'll move through properties at great speed. They're very quick. A little whip snake there in the middle. On the bottom down there, I've actually pulling out a very large Cape Cobra. It's 1.6 meters, I think I measured it at. We do get them. They do come down into our area. On the bottom right, I've got a puff adder. I'm going there. A very unfriendly puff adder, as it turned out that day. And then lastly, I've said earlier, some snakes we don't get down here, but this one over here is actually a ball python. This is actually someone's pet. It managed to escape into the car. Person drove down to the petrol station, and then the snake kind of dropped off the car once it stopped at the petrol station. But generally, the kind of snakes we get around here is, puff adders, cobras, the whip snakes up there, and the wormslungs. So in terms of Hout Bay, in terms of the medically significant snakes, so there are a couple other minor medically significant, but you've got enough time to get to hospital in those cases. These are the 2 that you really want to try and focus on, and look at these pictures and try and understand what they look like so that you can easily and quickly be able to recognize them. And so on the left-hand side, we've got a puff adder. And if you have a look at its head over there, it's very much the distinctive diamond shape. It's very distinct on our adders in South Africa. So diamond shape like that. And if you have a look on the back, you can see those triangles that go all the way down. And you've got the yellow and the black. And that's the kind of coloration they come in. They're quite a short, stocky kind of snake, about a meter or less than a meter. They do seem quite sluggish, but trust me, they can move very quickly. The general kind of behavior, which I've noticed from a puff adder quite a bit over there, is that they tend to go towards the freeze first of all. So they'll just keep very, very quiet, and they'll try and hide. I've walked very close to them before, literally within about an inch, and stepped right in front of it. Didn't strike. A lot of them won't. We are not prey for them. Their venom is there to capture prey, not to try and kill us. And then the second one is they'll try and flee. And then if they do try and flee and you still keep going after it, it is going to fight back. But again, something to spot over there. Diamond-shaped head, that kind of chevrons all the way down its back. Quite a short, fat, stocky snake. You will hear it if you get too close to it as well. It'll make this very guttural kind of sound. That's the kind of thing of stay away from me. Late evening, early nights, kind of when you can kind of see them a lot. They do come out during the day sometimes. They're generally looking for food. But that's general kind of overview of the puff adder. On the right-hand side, then we've got a Cape Cobra. That's a speckled Cape Cobra. We do get these in Hout Bay. Bit more of the kind of aggressive kind of Cape Cobras, if I can put it that way, that's the speckled, I've found anyway in my experience. Up to about 1.5 meters long. They can get up to 1.8, but it's very rare. Generally, 1 meter to 1.5 meters, that kind of range is pretty normal. A bit more slender compared to the shorter, stockier puff adder over there. And the telltale sign is always a hood. Don't be confused with a snake that'll lift itself off the ground trying to look compared to a hood. A hood is very flat and splayed out. And that kind of, when you see that, that is its protection mechanism. It's the freeze. It does kind of, in my experience again, the cobra will try and flee, and it's very quick. As soon as it sees you, it wants to get out of there. Remember, we're a predator to it. Much taller, much bigger, so they'll flee. If you try and back it into a corner, it'll kind of freeze and hood up at you. And it'll do the same as well if it's startled. And then lastly, if you keep going, it will fight and it will try and bite you. Diurnal, mostly seen during the day, as well as crepuscular, so early morning, evening kind of time. dusk and dawn kind of things when they'll generally kind of see them. Like I said earlier, they're quite easily confused with the mole snake, which are excellent rat catchers. And both of these are pretty much looking for vermin in and around your house. Let's say in and around your house. What happens is, and generally you find this a lot whenever I see a snake call out happening, is people have birds of some variety, be it chickens, love birds in the garden, or they'll have bird feeders. And what happens is the birds come along, they eat the seeds, but they throw it out. And the mice and the rats, of course, then come for this. And you generally won't see the mice, the rats, because they'll just be scurrying around everywhere, and you don't think it's kind of all that important. But then, of course, in move these two guys, hungry, looking for food. That's their food, and they'll go after it. So, kind of my general advice is always, if you've got kind of bird stuff, make sure you're keeping it very clean. If you've got bird feeders, generally kind of plastic underneath that you can kind of pick up and move away, so the mice don't come looking for those leftover pieces of seed that the actual birds have thrown out. Puff adder, cytotoxic, Cape Cobra, neurotoxic. So I'm going to get into what that means in a minute, but if you just have a look at those two pictures, make sure you understand what those two snakes are, and if you can recognize them, again, WatchCon is your first point of contact. What to do if bitten? Now, I'm not a medically trained doctor. I have taken training from Mike Perry. I cannot give medical advice. All I can tell you is what I would personally do if I was bitten, or if anyone that I cared about was bitten. This is what I would be doing. My go-to would be Tygerberg Hospital. I'd want to be getting there quite quickly. Problem with Tygerberg is, and if you have a look at this, and you can choose any hospital, is that it's quite a far way away. It's all the way up there towards Belleville. We do have closer ones. Milnerton's also just outside of this picture. But you have got all the Mediclinics over there, Constantiaberg. There's Vincent Pallotti you can go to, Life in Claremont. There's a lot of hospitals and Mediclinic in town that you can actually get to. From there, they can quickly transport you, or at least start to, stabilize you if anything's going wrong, and treat you for the symptoms, till they actually get you to a place that has actually got anti-venom. So, a couple of things. In South Africa, this is according to Africa Snake Bite Institute, 90% of all our bites are from the cytotoxic snakes. So Mozambique spitting cobra, we don't get those down here. The puff adder, we do get them down here, but like I say, they're very rare bites down here. In the last few years, there's been very few kind of bites out of it. Certainly in Hout Bay, I can't think of anything until recently, but it was a dry bite from a cobra. And again, it's very rare. You've got the stiletto down there and the rhombic night adder. We do get the night adders. They are still medically significant, but not as bad, should we say, as the puff adder and the Cape Cobra. Those are the two that you really want to be watching out for, know what to do. What to do if you get bitten? You need to call WatchCon and see if they can arrange you an ambulance as ASAP. My preference would be to, in some senses, just message WatchCon and then get going to a hospital. Like I said, deaths are very rare in South Africa. I think it's 10 to 12 deaths a year in South Africa. That's according to the Africa Snake Bite Institute. That's according to all of South Africa. And considering that the biggest two kind of fatalities that come from is going to be a Savannah cobra or a Mozambican spitting cobra, which is way up in the rural parts up there towards Kruger, that's where those kind of deaths would occur rather than down here. And that's due in most part because we do have a great medical system down here. What would I do if I was bitten by a cobra? What would I do if I was bitten by a puff adder? So let's just quickly go back here. Puff adder on the left is cytotoxic, and cytotoxic you need to think of as in it's an acid. And like any acid, if you just put it on your hand and you let it stay there, it'll actually go all the way through and it'll make deep kind of tissue damage. If you wipe that acid onto your hand like this and spread that acid quite quickly and quite kind of wide and varied, it's going to have less of a deep penetration and more of a surface layer. So again, if I was bitten by a puff adder, I'd want to be moving that arm, that limb, that foot around as much as possible to spread that venom over a larger surface compared with actually a smaller kind of injection point and leaving it. Certainly would not apply a pressure bandage for a puff adder. I certainly would not put a tourniquet. I'd never do a tourniquet. And I would certainly not try to be keeping it still. If it was me, I'd want to be moving it. On the contrasting side now, and again, that's why I've only put these two because these are two top medically significant. So cytotoxic, I'd be moving my limbs to spread the venom around. On a Cape Cobra, I'd want to keep my limb and my heart rate as low as possible. What I mean by that, if it's on your hand, keep your hand down. I'd want to be putting a pressure bandage. I'd want to start a pressure bandage from high up on the limb, kind of moving it all the way down. And the reason for that is I want to slow that venom down. It's not a tourniquet. I do not want to cut off blood circulation. I just want to slow that down, give me a bit more time so I can get to a hospital so they can start to work on me. And it's a neurotoxic. So what's going to happen there is when you get bitten by a neurotoxic snake, it affects the nervous system, of course. So breath, speech, thinking, eyes will start to go a little bit groggy. Your mouth will start to mumble. Heart rate becomes inflamed, and your lungs start to really like struggle to breathe. You go into labor breathing. Those are the typical kind of signs of a neurotoxic kind of bite in comparison to a puff adder, which does take longer but starts to kind of necrosis of the skin. And that's the picture that I showed you earlier. Again, bites are very rare, certainly for most people, and most snakes do not want to be biting us. It's harmful to them. It's an amino acid. If they're biting you and we're not their prey, they're actually draining themselves. So they don't want to be, they don't see us as prey. They don't want to be biting us, but they certainly will if we keep going for them. So if you see it, walk away, just keep calling WatchCon, take a photo, let us know what it is. Remain calm. Don't go running after a snake, please, and don't go getting the broom and trying to smack it. It's not a good idea. So that is what we should do, or what I would do. Like I said, I'm not a medically trained doctor. I know from my training of what I would do for myself. Your decision of what you would do would be for yourself as well. Lastly, this one over here, please don't, if you ever do get bitten by a snake, which like I said, is going to be so rare, don't try and suck the venom out. Chances are somewhere in your gums, you're going to have a bleeding point. As soon as you take that venom in and it hits one of your gums, it's an open wound, you're now in the bloodstream, it then starts to act. Don't try and suck it out. That's, like I said, all the hospitals that are around here that you can go to. Some of them do carry antivenom, some of them don't. You'll have to bring it in from certain areas. I know Tigerberg does because of the fact that it's a Venomation center up there. I forget what it's called. But they do have actually antivenom on site 9 times out of 10. Pets. This is where bites do actually start to occur. So in humans, we kind of leave them alone when it happens. Dogs, especially the smaller kind of dogs, that the breeds that typically go for Jack Russells. They're known for being good ratters and clean out the house of vermin. Yorkshire Terriers, any of the terrier kind of family. These are the ones that do generally get bitten. What would I do? Again, if it was my boys that got bitten, I'd be heading down to Penzance straight away. We have taken a few dogs down there that have been bitten. Their number 021-790-4777. It's where I go to, and they've got an emergency number there as well, 083-270-5784. Again, please phone out. You never know, you may need it one day. What happens if your dog gets bitten? Call Penzance and let them know you're on your way. Let them know what's happened. If you know what kind of snake it is, great, let them know. Send that photo to WatchCon, otherwise we can identify it and let them know. The last thing you want to do is have somebody apply an antivenom to the wrong kind of snake. It is very specific to the snake. And then you want to head straight to the vet. And that is basically it of what happens if your pets get bitten. From there on out, it'll be down to the vet to do his magic and make sure everything's okay. Old wives' tales, urban legends, and other interesting facts. Okay, so interesting facts. Snakes are actually lizards. The only difference is they've had their feet retracted, and some of the snakes, you can still see some of the bones that are very tiny of where their limbs used to be. A lot of people are afraid of the word, especially when you say the word snake, but if you say to them gecko, agama, or lizard, you're going to go, oh, that's cute. It's basically the same thing. The only thing on this one is that evolution has come to remove their limbs. Less than 10% of snakes are medically significant. This is on a global scale. So remember that Australia totally skews that balance. The top 9 out of 10 most venomous snakes in the world, according to Nat Geo, do exist in Australia. We've got one, of course, the black mamba. In terms of high envenomation and possibilities of death with that. So again, in South Africa, we've got a much lower ratio. I think it's about 7% or 6 point something percent of our snakes are medically significant. And again, out of those medically significant ones, some of them like the Wormslung, if you get bitten, you got quite a bit more time to get to hospital and actually get it sorted out. Okay, old wives' tale, and everyone's going to have a story for this. Everybody knows an uncle or an aunt or somebody where the snake was hunting them. Snakes do not hunt people. We are not their prey. The mice, the rats, the birds, etc. are prey. of the times where people have said categorically the snake ran towards them, and snakes don't run, they slither for starters, but the snake has come towards them because it's in the path of where its hideaway is or its hole is, and it wants to get into it. It just makes a beeline and it just goes for that hole. That's where it just wants to get away. People then confuse that and say, oh no, it actually ran after me or something else like that, and it doesn't actually happen that way. Snake is a reptile, a reptilian brain. It wants to get to safety. Snake bite serum. I've seen so much of this. People saying, hey, can't I just go into the shops and buy the snake bite serum? No, you cannot. This is not the movies. Anti-venom is made for a specific kind of snake. Now, you get monovalent and polyvalent kind of anti-venoms. I'm not going to go into the full details of the anti-venom, but you have to generally give, you have to give the right anti-venom for the right snake. And also 9 times out of 10, you don't know if it's a wet bite or a dry bite. So you do not want to be handling this stuff. You've got to be a trained medical professional to be handing out anti-venom. I would not be giving anti-venom to anybody. It's a doctor's responsibility. Only he's going to know the signs and the symptoms under a medical environment, what is actually going on. So this whole snake bite serum story, it doesn't exist. It's not worthwhile even going into. For the house and home, there is no magic spray or pellets you can put around your house or garden to keep them away. Remember, snakes are going to come through looking for prey. If their prey runs straight over the so-called anti-snake pellets and sprays, it's going to go straight through it. And it's going to keep going after their prey until it catches and then it's going to go back out again. My suggestion for the people who live on the back line, so up in the top of us over here, anybody on the back line, these wire fences, these clear view fences are fantastic, provided you dig them down, because a snake can't get through that. For those who have got other different types of fences, I would certainly recommend if you can get some shade netting, and you dig it down to the ground and you kind of put it up against your fence, and it still allows you that kind of visibility, but it also kind of makes it a little bit more difficult for the snakes. It's not a foolproof method. It doesn't work all the time, but it does give you that layer of keeping them out. And you've got to remember as well, there's going to be trees that they can come over in, or they'll go around the side to your neighbors and then come up the front. They will go where their prey is, and once their prey leaves, they'll leave as well. They're following their prey around to try and get food. As I mentioned earlier, sucking out the venom does not work like it does in the movies. In fact, it became very fatal. Like I say, you might have just gotten some on your skin over here and it may not have gone in. You go and suck it out, but now it goes into your gums. Not a good thing. Do not shock it, do not bleach it, and do not jick it. If you ever get bitten, I've seen some horrendous stories of people saying they stand there with a taser and they shock it. It's not going to do anything. Bleaching it and jicking it again is not going to do anything. These are old housewives' tales. And that is it. But just to reiterate what to do, call WatchCon, keep an eye on the snake, 021 790 9333, put the number in your phone. Second one is Penzance Vet. If your pet does get bitten or you suspect that it has been bitten, and get down there as soon as you can. Thank you very, very much, and hope this has actually helped you a little bit to calm your mind down that we don't have that many snakes. People don't get bitten all that often, and we are here to volunteer and provide our help when, of course, we can, if we're not in meetings. Hope you have a great night.